the sky, and your spirit is one with me. Your wings span the mighty ocean, your eyes see everything. The slightest of your motions can make the continents ring. Yet in all your might and glory, vanished from the sky, leaving just another story amidst millions of man-made lies. Because how you fell from the sky, you're one proud.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. My guest today is William Blair, and William does advanced analysis of systems within the context of his complete set of principles. I've got his email up on the website to direct him, contact him directly. Use auditor at Infraspect. .com, Infraspect.com. But to introduce him, let me use his own words. The sooner the public realizes how thoroughly they are being manipulated to the depth of their very perceptions, values, and identity, the sooner people at large can become part of the solution to what I call the Babylonian oligarchical big hoax. With these truths, we are then able to withdraw from the Hitlerian big lie, restore inherent liberties, make real choices about what we are buying into, and build solutions rather than perpetuating the problems socially engineered to keep us busy, distracted, and actually helping our enemies that engineer this social serial trauma control grid. The truth is available to those who seek it and embrace it and take full responsibilities for their perceptions, beliefs, actions, habits, and destiny. William, welcome.
Thank you. And words are certainly important. It's another day. It's another bright day, regardless of the obstacles. And if we learn one thing to provide some sort of successes in our endeavors, it would be to turn obstacles into assets. And that is one of those very important aspects of a good leadership personality. Today, we have, obviously, an agenda. We have a very special kind of insight that's going out there all over Indian country, which is indigenous. And indigenous country includes us as indigenous people, even though we are not Indians, no matter where we live on the planet. The preface is this: in the system, the ordered system that's actually underlying all of the dialectics, the structured conflicts politically, is called collaborative governance. It is a doctrine by where the deciders, the partners, the stakeholders eliminate the pesky public, because the public is considered to be of low status knowledge. One of the methods that everyone will notice in their community is what I've named the blue flat tarp. The blue flat tarp is a psychological model of thought reform, mind control, brainwashing, and value washing. It's used in many, many folky-looking local groups. Essentially, the folks are subjected to a framework of participatory democracy. Within that local community collaborative group, a facilitator cuts and fits a tarp, and that tarp creates a session, and his ideology is guided by pre-decisional criteria. The tarp is designed too small for the number of selected participants, and we call that economic command. The area outside the tarp is called the ecological habitat, whereas the tarp is the human habitat. The channeling apparatus, the economic channeling, is based on market-driven solutions, and that is the tarp. The tarp's foundation is substantiated by a commercial innovative law, and they use the phrase proof of concept to show what they're doing. The tarp occupants, tenants, are supervised by equal false rights. The fear element comes in because all of the standing people on the tarp are afraid of falling off the edge. We call that the tipping point, or the leaky canoe, or the never-ending global climate crisis, or overpopulation, and so forth. The facilitator buzzes around the parameter, watching for infractions, violations of policy. The facilitator's rules, fixing the options, making sure the participants keep their feet on the flat tarp or on the ground, objected by. Division turns into functionally specialized things. In other words, the people on the tarp only function within the dysfunction. The group is subjugated to a controlled environmental condition. Each group member gets to empower themselves in a non-contentious manner called positivism. The overloading of the participants on the tarp creates sectarian tensions, and this creates a requirement for the participants on the tarp to micromanage each step, each move they make. This creates a dynamic of known as order out of chaos, while the human habitat is distinguished and kept separate from the actual ecological habitat. Now, when you fly over the world, and I fly occasionally to do particular kinds of special projects, audits in the field, it is very clear that the populations of people are concentrated mostly within a very close proximity to coastal regions. And these population centers are absent of a particular aspect or attribute of life, and that is space, trees, mountains, water, fields. From here to the Central Plains, from the west to the Central Plains, it's very clear that there's not much occupation outside of these metroplexes. These metroplexes are the result of rural cleansing, that is, the actual words apply. Intertemporal human capital transport to optimal consumption pathways. And I call it metroplexing. Essentially, people are pushed into the metroplex so that the more efficient way of maximizing profit can be taken from them.
And controlled.
And controlled through an economic
I have
process.
referred, William, I have referred to the cities as the ghettos, as they're already. That's where the New World Order is. That's where the police forces have been turned and militarized. That's where they can keep track on you. That's where they got cameras on every corner. It's like living in a prison without walls.
Right. There's several doctrines to substantiate what I'm saying. It goes back into the myth of the rule of law, which means a false appearance of fairness. There is no such thing in law as actual fairness, and there is no objectivity in law. Law comes from a wide range of perverse institutional applications, meaning that people are just making stuff up. The further we get into the darkness, the more the desperate the authorities become to just keep order and control, so they just make up a law arbitrary. That means the deciders simply make a law. And this advance now to where actually it brings us to the aspects of indigenous identity theft. Now, to understand indigenous, we have to understand what that means, and that's where we went into the declaration by indigenous people, which includes you and I and every person on the planet. And one of the most important things was the taking of this identity and recreate that identity as an artificial person. In the document I sent to you, which is now posted on your web secondary page, the particular elements in the identity theft are specified. Identity theft involves deception, theft by deception, and fraudulent conversion and conveyance. Basically, to do this, the methodology includes isolation, alienation, disenfranchising, plausible guilt scenarios. And in your personal experience, several things were applied to create a hate bias, prejudice against you, as well as a listing, because you dissented. The purpose of taking indigenous identity is the prosecution or the taking of territories, living places, natural assets, and valuable expressed intellectual ideas, inventions, and the indigenous identity in and for itself, because that attaches people to their estate. The false rights have been used to keep people distracted as instruments, constructing an artificial person as property of the collective. Ordered society, collaborative groups, cults, or corporations, enrolled members of tribes. The papers are called Social Security papers. They're birth, death certificates, government identification cards, Social Security papers, passports, vehicle, aircraft, boat titles, RFID tracking tags, licenses, permits, insurance certificates, academic degrees, article of commerce, appraisals, credited instruments, and they're all issued with expiration dates. Isn't that interesting? And they're all owned by foreign agents or agencies. This methodology comes from the academic quacks, and they are academic quacks, and those people are found in universities, colleges, and fusion centers, more characteristic of the Homeland Security instruments, which have evolved way beyond security and have gone to actually a process of industrial espionage. In other words,
now,
the information is mined and sold.
The fusion centers, I said that sprang, I've told people that came out of this legislation, what was it, 1959, Senate Bill 1959, talking about homegrown terrorists. And that's where these centers are.
The family of.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The family of the. First of all, a patriot has never, in the Patriot Act series, has never been defined, and it was left arbitrary so that they're called EPers, so that they could just use their prerogatives. They get in power, they make law arbitrary, whatever they think they need to stay in power. In other words, the purpose of management is sustainable management. And what happened was the families of so-called terrorism provisions widened the scope of plausible guilt. That is, they went away from the actual elements of crime and they came to a word called potentiality, which was well rehearsed in the moot courts of the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, and their cooperators. And what happened was potentiality took the place of the elements of what constitutes a criminal action. That meant that they could go into thought policing and so forth. A lot of instead of due process, which was proof of fact, we ended up in a scenario where it would be the agent believes. Well, that's nice, sounds a little religious, because most agents are oriented and have a background in a political philosophy and so forth, extending to religious convictions and participation in a congregation. The actual models go into a vast definition of things, including extremism. In other words, it no longer was it terrorism; it became radicalism, and the homegrown terrorism or radicalization act series. It simply lists about 25, 30 different kinds of classes of offenses, and also type of offenders, say green anarchism, lone terrorists, Mexican separatism, a wide variety of all thought and mental crimes. Now, this goes so far and so insane that actually the New Testament is considered a biased crime. The extremists are now grouped in really meaning dissent. If you dissent and if you're not on board, as I said on the blue tarp, then you have to be a dissenter or extremist. The actual breadth of this, and I'll just list it very quickly to get the breadth of the applications, the systems that are involved with interview methods and so forth. Department of Homeland Security has several things involved: fascist attribute screening technology, YouTube, human factors, behavioral science projects, actionable indicators, countermeasures, biometric detector projects, perceptions of technology panel project, community resilience project, enhancing public response and community resilience project, further attribution screening technology called FAST. It's a little bit more involved one. Hostile intent detection, automated prototype project, hostile intent detection, validation of observable indicators of suspicious behavior project, human systems engineering project, human system research project, insider threat detection, mobile biometric system projects, and on and on. The A2 rapid DNA projects, risk prediction project, violent intent modeling and simulation project. Now, these are all part of the pre-crime detection system, all based on potentiality. When you go through screening at airports, you're going to see certain people go through the security checkpoints and fly right through. My direct experience is very clear. The type of people being really a stop and frisk shakedown are average people, and they're looking for basically infractions or misdemeanors. They're no longer looking for the great big bomb, and most of the people at an airport cannot comprehend that. It's very interesting. Going in the airport, you're checked to a high degree security level, and the threat matrix, if you want to go into that, I'll show you what the threat matrix is the other way around, reciprocally applied. But there's no security checkpoints coming out of airports. Most people do not think that because they don't think outside the box. And the box is the blue tarp. The new interdiction warfare that's going on under the war on terror, the interdiction system, is about electronic, chemical warfare, psyops, and so forth. The types of EPP, ELF, and HARP technologies are being applied to the incredible, vast system of inclusionary control on the public. Now, if people think this is conspiracy, then they need to go into the demonstration case file and look at the 38,000 exhibits, 375,000 case files, and a 640-page qualification of what I'm saying in great detail with the lawful citations as well as the technical citations. The President Obama is not the issue. He is administrating as a chief executive officer various things involving the PD 51 executive authorities. These all go to authoritarian rule, And what America is facing right now is a conversion from representative rule to authoritarian rule, and there is a lot of rational, institutional, normative rationale that supports that, to go that way. The collaborative governance model is being codified, and basically a lot of the public is being disenfranchised because they are not of high status knowledge across the board. 51, Executive Order 51, or if you want to call it PDP, is really a complex matter that simply says we don't trust the public and we don't trust the legislature. In other words, collaborative governance says we won't have to worry about that pesky legislative body anymore. No, it's a constitutional republic and a democratic legislature. What collaborative governance does is it puts formal consensus of the group in control, and the outcome is the enforcement of their decision. This is not me, my opinion or anything. This is my direct documented observations of the process.
Well, what you're describing is exactly what the Patriot Act did. They change the laws any way they want. They can, if they say this, you might be a terrorist if you're taking pictures here.
That's true, and basically you'll see that officers, especially in the Occupy thing, are moving along with their media cohorts under a C2W command model, where the counterinsurgency groups go in and they work with the media to shift the context and the argument or the controversy to really, you don't want these protesters out there because it's inconvenient and it costs money in the budget, and we're going to have to tax you if you allow these protesters to be out there as they are. The banks' money is turned around at enormous rates. Each transaction's collecting probably, in the end, 27% off a dollar for every transaction. The banking system is the issue, but they're keeping people functionally specialized on the TARP now to get them to argue about little things in the occupancy dynamic. So the occupancy is assembly. If you took away all the words and never mentioned the bank, and the signs were blank, and I tested this in Eugene, Oregon, we assembled, and the range of the participants was from a Supreme Court justice down to a young child. And we videotaped it. There was nothing written on the signs. We assembled. This was a test. Nobody had anything bad to say about us. The horns honked. Everybody was happy. 27 police cars went by us. We were in a no-protest zone called the downtown zone. Nobody touched us because the authorities knew if they touched us, the issue would be assembly, not what was written on the sign. So there was nothing to drive the political anti-government sentiment or anything whatsoever. There was no substance prejudicially designed or from the orientation of the authorities and their agent officers. That meant that we assembled, and it was a right to assembly. There was one operative that came through and attempted to intimidate and interfere with people and to get them to say something. My instructions to the group were simple. I have no answer for that. Isn't that a familiar phrase? I have no answer for that. This one particular operative who was trying to get facial recognition and do a little profile of pictures on everyone would not speak to me. He knew who I was. He tried to get at the women and the kids. That's the target, women and the kids, always the women and the kids issue. So we're looking at, what I'm saying in total here is we now have detected and used an audit process to engage at the field level. And I'll be back in the field this week doing the same kind of work in the Midwest probably. And if you can detect what's really going on, then you can actually go into a positive convergence, which is a doctrine we use, and it's driven by articles, and it says, let's do things right. That's how the declaration by indigenous people came about at the request of Art George, who is the chairman pro tem of the Congress of Elders in Nevada, California, and he is an indigenous person. Now, in terms of tribal associations. So over the years and way behind this matter came about over and over again because of so many people that were being preempted in their place, their living place. We went into a lot of things and studied a lot of things about the indigenous affairs. Always the same demon's head comes up, and that's collaborative governance. Even the Sierra Club being very much handled in this global left-wing kind of a persuasion. McCluskey was an executive director of the Sierra Club years ago, and he said, collaboration is a stake in the heart of democracy. So that even within the illusion of democracy, a left-wing personality understood that collaboration was a stake in the heart of democracy. Democracy is a legislative instrument under and within a constitutional republic. Now, there's one other element going on here, and that is the prepossessory absolute individual Indian rights. That's meaning the indigenous people have personal property. The counties in Montana, North and South Dakota are moving strategically and tactically with county takings under tax deeds. They're going to face a counteraction that's beyond their lawyers' comprehensions, and I assure you it's coming, and we're protracting it. The indigenous takings of their identity are so heinous and so reckless. It reminds me of first and second year law students. Unfortunately, the AGs of the states and the AGs of the county and Eric Holder and those kind of personalities have double spoke it, meaning we're going to prosecute our way to prosperity, but we're not going to. And they gave a presentation at Pine Ridge to attempt to quell the reciprocal offensives that are coming out of Indian country. The states, through the UN apparatus, are being granted incredible authorities and powers and assumptions of powers to basically hand off the tribes to the states under states' rights fabricated doctrines. The states are subdivisions of the United States corporations, as you know. But the UN doctrine came in, and line item specifically is the most important giveaway in Indian history of the BIA administrative authorities to the state administrative authorities. This is a shenanigan that has been spoon-fed to Indian country under doctrines such as nation building. It's nation building, all right. It's United Nations building.
Now, what is happening to us right now? They're making criminals. Ayn Rand said the government has no control over honest citizens, so they have to make criminals out of us. We've got more people in jails than any communist country out there. Anyone in the world, percentage-wise. And I see the police state being formed and locking down because I've been subjected to it. I've also referred to myself as the canary